Hello and welcome back to Russ Plays Games. My name is Russ, and as you can see, we are sitting in front of my paint station. We're back for another round of going through some of the painting things. I finally figured out who this is going to represent. Her name is Lola Darkslip, and she's an actual person who, if you've ever played or if you've ever looked at Warlord, she's a freelance killer. Okay, basically is what she does. Now, I looked up the rules last night, the night before filming this, at Totems of Battle. And Totems of Battle, they have rules for what they want the totems to represent in the original rule booklet. And they're supposed to be on large bases. I don't care about that. My thing is this. As long as it represents what you're supposed to do, okay? So like this is supposed to represent, it's a pillar of evil, okay? So it's supposed to represent an evil faction. So it can represent any of the evil factions. The Darkspawn, it can represent the evil faction of the Nefsakar, and I mean not Nefsakar, Necropolis, or it could even represent the faction of the Overlords. So either one of those three, I don't have a problem with. Okay. So as long as it represents what it is to you, and then what I would say is that because it's supposed to be on a large base, large bases are 2 inches. What I would say is that as long as a miniature comes, within approximately 2 inches, okay, let's say, then I would say that it would, as long as you're within 2 inches of the base, then you have successfully stopped the Totem of Battle's, effect, which it basically only gives +1 melee attack value. And then I finally got the dude's head on straight. This is what he looks like. So we'll paint him up probably next, maybe somebody else. But anyway, so I just wanted to kind of show that off. Okay. And then what you're supposed to do if you want to defile it, a Totem of Battle, then you're supposed to go and you're supposed to make base-to-base contact. Okay, so you're actually supposed to hit the base, and then you're supposed to then you're supposed to do what's called a loot action. Okay, and loot action is something that you just declare. So if this was one of my characters and he's like this, then I could say, okay, he's going to loot this, and you have to loot it 6 times. And so then you just take like a little D6 or you take a D10 and you put it down on 1, and then every time you loot, you add it up. Okay, and so if you do it correctly, then that's how it's supposed to work. But anyway, that's kind of how it works. So we'll kind of stick that guy off to the side, and we'll look at that later. Okay. So now, I also wanted to show, I picked up a new shade. Totally a green shade, okay? This particular pot cost me $8, okay? 8 US bucks for that, okay? And you get not even a fluid ounce. You get 24 milliliters of that. They still don't have any Agrax Earthshade. So it's kind of like, whatever. Not a big deal. Not a huge thing. I'm not going to complain. I will figure out how to do it. Just not enamored of their shades right now. Their shades are either way too light or way too dark. And I'm just not enamored of them. Alrighty. So we're going to finish this guy. This won't take too long. And get on to more exciting things. Have you voted yet? If you haven't voted yet, as of the filming and putting up of this video, well, by the time it actually goes out, it's probably going to be too late. So, you missed it. But, if you did vote, good for you. And that is for my US audience, by the way. I don't honestly know. I know Britain just had an election for a brand new prime minister, so congratulations to him. I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. I don't know much about British politics. Tell me if in the comments if you're a British citizen. You can say, "Oh no, that was the worst. No, we don't want that man." Or you can say, "Yeah, he's pretty good. He's pretty cool." I know he was endorsed by Boris Johnson. So, like I said, I don't know much about the politics of your country, so I have no idea, and I'm not going to speculate idly on it, because that's your country, and you guys so, you know, if it's a good thing for you, then you can say, yeah, it's great, or if you don't like it, you can say, no, it was horrible, don't want that man, and I won't care, because honestly, I'm like, whatever. I mean, you just look at who we have in power here in the U.S., and you can say, yeah, take a rock over that man. And I don't say that lightly. It's how bad it is here in the U.S. But if you support the man, go for it. Not a big deal. Skin off my nose. I'm not going to sit there and begrudge you that if that's your politics. So, that's not what this channel's about. Or at least this portion of the channel. I'm just saying, if you haven't voted as of the coming out of this video, you probably missed it, because as of filming this video, there was actually, it's like the Friday before the Tuesday of the election, so that's why I bring it up. Because if you haven't voted, probably should have voted. Or hopefully you will be voting. Because everybody should vote. Okay, I think, and like I said, I'm not subscribing to any one particular thing. I'm not going to try to sway anybody on this video, because that's not what this video is about. This video is about painting. So, okay. Now, what we're going to end up with is, do one thing before we shade. I'm just going to clean up the cloak here. Okay. Now, because I got some brand new, shades. Okay. All right. So I'm going to pull out our Drakenhof Nightshade. And I'll probably use the Known Oil, but right now we're going to spend a little bit. And we'll take some Colia Green Shade. It was actually advantageous that I got this because now that I don't have Agarac's Earthshade, I have no way of making a green shade. Kind of sucks. But now that I have this Colia Green Shade color, I can actually make it an actual green shade. And again, just like normal, we're just looking to kind of deepen in a lot of the shadows and a lot of the stuff on the pants and folds and stuff like that, because we will come back over some of that with highlights. But what we'll probably do is, for tonight, we'll probably throw this off to the side and just kind of let it dry tonight and move on to a different. Okay. So yeah, good color. Colia Green Shade. Really works fairly well at darkening down his pants a little bit. So that's pretty good. And of course we know about the Drakenhof Nightshade. This one is a classic blue shade color that we've used many different times on this particular one. But, okay. So, what we're going to do is we're going to spend a little bit of time just kind of deepening in some of these. Okay. I've been spending a lot of time listening to videos and other content creators and stuff like that from YouTube. And I've kind of realized something. A lot of them are right when it comes to some of the predatory practices of a certain subsidiary based in England. I am, of course, talking about Games Workshop. Now, I'm not one to scoff at Games Workshop because they have good products, don't get me wrong. They're not the best, but they're good products. My biggest problem with them has been with their recent range refreshes for a lot of their primo lines. If you've been following, say, Zorpazorp, you know that he's a huge Games Workshop proponent, okay? And he's, built probably thousands of dollars worth of their miniatures in his channel's life. And I don't have a problem with his content. His content's awesome. The one biggest thing that I have a problem with Games Workshop, and this is something that I've kind of found out as I've kind of listened to some of the content creators like Discourse Miniatures and a few others online, that there's been some things that have gone on from Games Workshop that some people are not happy with, okay? Myself included. And the only reason I say that is because, well, as a fan of certain miniatures, as a fan of just miniature wargaming in general, I want to believe that, wargaming companies want people to play their war games. But it seems like Games Workshop doesn't necessarily want people to play their war games. And I'm not saying that in a, oh my god, Games Workshop has just shut everybody down. But the problem that I have is if you look at, say, Warhammer 40k Kill Team, okay? Eric's Hobby Workshop has been doing a board for Kill Team, okay, the new Kill Team, the Into the Dark box set. And I went to my local hobby shop, game and hobby shop, and kind of looked around and was like, hey, I'm trying to find, I'm looking around at some of the Games Workshop stuff, and oh my god, was it expensive. And I don't just mean that in a, it's somewhat expensive. No, it is $210 for the box set. That's not hyperbole. It is literally $210 for their box set. And the new Age of Sigmar box set is $200. And I get that plastics are a little bit more expensive nowadays because of certain things that are going on, inflation, various things like that. I get that. But Games Workshop has been steadily upping the price of their miniatures substantially over the last few years. I mean, they have been going absolutely insane with some of their stuff. And I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why Games Workshop feels it necessary to charge people more for less. I don't get it. It doesn't make any logical sense to do that. And I started thinking about it, and when I first got into Warhammer Fantasy Battles, I started building a Bretonnian force because a buddy of mine was wanting to play something fantasy related. He'd been playing 40K for a long time. He was in the Navy, and he was like, I just don't want to play. He was like, I don't know what I want to play yet. And I was like, well, do you want to play? And he was like, I want to play something fantasy. And I said, okay, well, do you want to play, Warhammer Fantasy, or do you want to play Lord of the Rings? And he was like, well, the only problem with Lord of the Rings is that everything is, black or white. You can choose the good guys or you can choose the bad guys. And he goes, I want more choice than that. I want to play, I want to try something different. I said, okay, play some Warhammer Fantasy. So I had bought, and he actually helped me kind of build, because he had, built forces before. So he was helping me build a set of, Warhammer Fantasy characters. And I was doing Bretonnia because I had gone to a Half Price Books and bought a Bretonnian box. And I was like, it is what it is. It's Bretonnia. They're kind of cool. I like their aesthetic. I've always been into knights and that kind of stuff, the Arthurian legend, and so I really enjoyed it. And that was also one of the things that I really didn't like about Games Workshop, is that when they went to Age of Sigmar, and I'll get to this in a second, they kind of they took some armies and they were like, oh yeah, here's some brand new people in these new armies, yay! And then they were like, oh, and by the way, yeah, certain players, yeah, you don't get jack squat. Suck it. I was like, seriously? What the hell, man? And my Bretonnians got completely left out. Okay. And when Age of Sigmar came down, I bought two. By the way, that's what he looks like shaded. I'm gonna come back and I'll paint his. He's got some pauldrons. I didn't really realize it. I thought they were actually like veins in his arm, but they're actual pauldrons. So I'm gonna come back and I'll paint those, and then I'll redo the shade, the Seraphim Sepia shade on that, and then when we come back on the next one, we'll do the base and we'll call it a finished miniature. Do some highlighting, we'll do some stuff like that. And so I was sitting there thinking to myself, what do I want to do? Actually, I think I'll do this guy just because. And I was sitting there kind of thinking, what do I, want to do with this, this name? Like, how is this relevant to some of the new stuff, the new direction that Games Workshop is kind of going in. I mean, like, how is everything related? And I went and picked up a boxed set called Thunder and Blood. Now, what Games Workshop had done is they said, look, here's the rules for free. And they gave you a 4-page rules document, okay? That was, you could just come in and you could just buy the thing and you stuck it in, you were good to go, okay? And they also released every single army faction up to that point. Basically anything that had an army codex at that point was basically given a war scroll, a free downloadable war scroll. Okay. So, like, you just go in and just download whatever you wanted for your particular faction. So, if you played Dark Elves, you could go in and download Dark Elves. If you played the Bretonnians, you could go in and download the Bretonnians. You could go in and download the Empire, the Wood Elves, the High Elves, everybody. And they had every single figure that basically had a miniature up to that point was in that sort of a system rules document, okay? That people were allowed to kind of, have access to. And I thought that was actually pretty neat because I thought, wow, as a Bretonnian player, that's kind of cool. And just so that I could have sort of an official product and have maybe some villains that I could have access to and be have something to kind of like throw on the table if I had some friends or if I had some people who were kind of curious about it that wanted to play it, whatever. Games Workshop had released a whole bunch of brand new boxed sets. Now, the original box set, and you can actually see the funny thing is that up on their website, they still have their they still have, or actually, it's on their YouTube site. I shouldn't say their website. On their YouTube page, they have they still have the original painting videos for their original boxed set that came out a few years ago for Age of Sigmar. And because I was just thinking about this the other night because I had picked up some of my old Warhammer stuff and I was kind of looking through it and because I'd been hearing people talk about some of the Games Workshop stuff and so I was kind of looking through it and I was just kind of looking at some things and like I said I realized something and I'll get to that here in a second. And basically they released 3 versions of their boxed set. The first version was the full boxed set. Okay, it was everything that you could ever want in their box. Okay, just perfect. And then they had a second one, which was the one that I got. It was called Thunder and Blood. Okay, and it was an $80 boxed set that allowed you to pick up some of the models without having to spend the $150 US for the whole thing. Okay, keeping an eye on the time here. And basically, you could go in and you would get, and you would also get like a little playmat. And then you were given sort of a rules, again, like a rules book, and it kind of told you the lore of Age of Sigmar, and it kind of like went through all of that, decent stuff. And then the third boxed set was sort of a $40 boxed set. It was kind of a like, here's a few of our people, like here's a few of our miniatures to kind of get you started. Okay, you can kind of learn some of it, but you're not going to be able to play the full experience. You're going to have to, buy more miniatures if you want the full experience. But it gets you started. And when we come back, I will finish this story with their second release, which kind of comes back to this point of what I was saying about Games Workshop. Okay, so we'll be back. For you, it'll be less than a second. For me, it might be a little bit more than that. So we will see you in just a second. Alrighty, welcome back. So, as you can see, we got this guy base coated. And then I also went ahead and base coated the Pillar of Evil. I also wanted to show you really quick. I went back by my local game store and I picked up a ghoul or a ghost, and it's basically, I don't know if you can kind of see it, but it's like he's kind of like flying through an actual gravestone right down here. So I'm going to use him as a spectral minion for my Necropolis army, because in Necropolis you can actually use an ability called Summon Spectral Minion. And then I bought some skeletal archers because I needed some ranged support for my guys. Also, I kind of wanted to highlight that before the Primaris Space Marine reset that Games Workshop did, I was actually building and painting a whole bunch of Dark Angels. Okay, and this guy was actually one of the ones that I actually did freehand. That's his pauldron with the Dark Angels symbol on one side, and then the tactical squadron of 3rd Squad that I did freehand. Okay, and then the reason why I did 3rd Squad is because 3rd Squad, the only thing that you had to do was just paint one little stripe across their pauldron, right across their knee pad. And then because you could also build and paint another chapter in a box, I started building some Ultramarines, and I actually did here again. I actually painted the U inside his little iron halo there was freehand, and then he's Tactical Squad 2nd Company. So this is actually because this is kind of the main champion. This is Scipio Vorolanis. Okay. And so if you know the novel Assault on Blackreach, Scipio Vorolanis was the guy who kind of like backed up the main guy. And then I have this is actually, now I can't remember if this was one of the guys that I built from before, or if this was, and I think this was one of the guys that I built from before. So this is actually one of the actual company veterans squad that you see in the box in the background there. And then this is actually part of a 40K basing kit. These are etched brass things that you can buy, and you can paint them different colors to make them look like different things. So I have this company veteran, and I also have this company veteran who, you can tell that they're company veterans by their pauldrons, and so he's 3rd. And so yeah, I have a couple of those guys, and then I also like built and painted up some of the normal, like this guy's got the heavy support, the rocket launcher, and he's got the purity symbol, and then this is the automatic rocket launcher reloader. So basically, what this thing does is the arm comes down and it grabs onto the rocket and then it loads it into the back. It's like an automatic rocket launcher, so that they don't have to try to do that themselves. Okay, and then I was also, and then I think this one. Yeah, this guy was another one of my attempts to do, and he might have actually been the champion of the tactical squad. He might be the Primaris. I don't remember, because I know I bought a Primaris. I know I bought a couple of Primaris Marines only because, it's kind of what they were. And then I bought a little Scout Squad. So this is like the champion of the Scout Squad. He's actually got like his little scope that he can use to look. And do things. And then I have, this is the librarian for the squad. And what I loved is that you could take this little hand, which was a part that you could actually put into a gun. But I saw this little book part, and I actually painted the book separately. And then what I did is I went in and put some different, freehand writing on there. And basically, my story for the librarian is basically, you're a heretic, prepare to burn. Like, this book I'm holding basically says, you're a heretic, burn. So, yeah, kind of a burn them all policy. And then what I loved was that if you bought a tactical squad, one of the guys comes with an arm that has a magazine in it. And so what they told you is if you clip the magazine off of the actual gun itself, you can put it on the base. And so then it looks like he's reloading. And I always thought that was kind of cool. So yeah, I have a guy that's actually reloading, and he's actually dropped his empty magazine into the dirt, and then he's getting ready to insert the new magazine into the thing. So I was like, yes, that's badass right there. Okay, so let us talk a little bit. Also, I know it's been 7 minutes, and I've kind of been going off about some other things. So let me show you a couple of the miniatures that I got in the Thunder and Blood set. So this is one of them. This is one of the, I believe he's the Khorne Bloodbound. And what these guys are is these guys are basically like the heavy infantry of the Khorne army that you got in the box set. Both Thunder and Blood and the main set. And then this is Vec, I believe is his name. And he's known as a Blood Stoker. And basically what he does is he has these whips, and they basically like whip his troops into a frenzy in front of him. Okay? And then his hand, it's really cool. His hand is actually gone, and it's almost like if you remember Azog, the Defiler in The Hobbit, right? He had his arm chopped off, and he had that one sword that was basically like sticking through his elbow and then out through the stump. He's got kind of the same thing. The only difference is that this doesn't go all the way through his elbow, but it's literally like stuck into his arm, if you can see that. That's insane. And so, yeah, and then you get like Celestin Prime, or not the Celestin Prime, you get a Retributor Prime, you get a Liberator Prime, and you get a Lord Relictor. Who's kind of like he's a hero, but he's also like a magic user for the for the Stormcast Eternal. Really cool miniatures, okay? That's what you get in Thunder and Blood. The next release that Games Workshop did, and we'll do that while we're kind of talking here. The next release that Games Workshop did, okay, and this was kind of a weird, like, don't know why they did this, but the next release that they did was called the Stormstrike, and that was the lesser box set, and then they had like, I can't remember what it was called, but there was like one where like it was there was the main box set, and then there was Stormstrike, which was the lesser of the two box sets. Okay, and so once again, didn't want to pay full price for the whole box set, so I was thinking, I'll buy this Stormstrike box set and call it good. Well, I found out that you buy that box set and it doesn't come with all of the figures necessary to actually play the game. Because they left out a couple of the figures, the heroes necessary for the hero phase of the rules. Now keep in mind, the Thunder and Blood set, even though you didn't get all of the figures necessary, you still got those figures necessary to play the full experience. So unless you bought the lesser set. So what you got was you got three. I'm trying to remember what they're called, but they're basically like they basically have these mauls, but they're not the mauls that you get in the Retributors in the Thunder and Blood set. They're a different model, okay, and they have a different name, and their mauls are more like shaped like an actual like the point of a hammer rather than like the blunt edge of a hammer. Okay, you get 3 or 4 of those. Okay, you get 3 of the guys that have the great big crossbows, and then you get a Gryph-hound. That's it. And so it's like, okay, so I get less figures, and when I read through the rules, I find out that the figures that I have aren't even enough to play the full game. Basically, Games Workshop kind of teases me and says, oh, you want to play the full game? Well, you have to go onto our website and you have to buy this set. And, haha, joke's on you. It's like, wait a minute, what? What are you talking about, Games Workshop? And so, and then on the Nighthaunt side of things, because they were introducing Nagash, the Lord of Evil, in that release, they were kind of highlighting Nagash. They were trying to, bring in the Nighthaunt, and they were trying to make them this big faction. Oh yeah, look at the Nighthaunt, they're so cool. You got exactly 4 Glavewraith Stalkers and 4 Myrnmourne Banshees. That's it for the Nighthaunt. That's all you had. Okay. And for their big and so how they decided that instead of, well, kind of similar to, I guess I should say, kind of similar to how they did the rules in Thunder and Blood. In Thunder and Blood, your characters, like each part of the their respective each one kind of introduced. So like the first one was like, here's a single, or like basically here's a miniature, like here's a couple miniatures, here's a couple miniatures on this side. This just kind of teaches you how to move and and do things and do stuff. And then as you progressed throughout the 4 or 5 scenarios that they gave you in the Thunder and Blood set, they would like add in the new characters and then kind of show them off as being this brand new like here's how to play this particular part of the turn, and here's how to do this and here's how to do that, which I mean that's pretty typical of newer miniatures games when they're trying to teach people how to play. In fact, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields, before Games Workshop did their range refresh recently, the Battle of the Pelennor Fields version of the Middle Earth strategy battle game actually had like the same kind of thing. Like it had 4 separate scenarios, and each scenario you would go and use a different character, and that character would show you like, okay, here's how to do this part, and here's how to do this part, and it would kind of bring you this kind of a unique sort of setting and a unique sort of thing with what to do with your different characters and stuff. Because that's how Games Workshop usually does things. And what kind of ended up happening is that in the Storm Strike, they were like, okay, here's like you have your guys with the crossbows. I think they were called, I want to say they're prosecutors, but they might have been judiciaries. But anyway, they basically like they had their big crossbows, and or maybe it was the guys with the mauls or something. Anyway, you fight with them for a minute, and then and or maybe it was like the one guy who's the prime, and then you have like 2 glaive ray stalkers on either side, and they basically fight back and forth. And then the next scenario is like here's how to do ranged, and and like your opponent will have these particular things that will happen, and so you want to make sure that you're doing this with them, and you want to make sure that you're doing that with them, and then the third one was here's like here's the basically most of the forces that are in this box fighting to see what they're going to do, blah blah blah. And then the 4th scenario, which is the scenario because each one introduced a new element to it. So like one was like, okay, here's the first one was like, okay, here's how to move, and here's how to attack. The second one was like, here's how to use ranged. Here's how to use this. Here's how to use that. And so each one introduced a new phase into the different parts, and it was kind of interesting. It was kind of neat. It was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. But then when you got to the part where it where it discussed the hero phase, which was basically the last scenario in the whole, freaking book. It goes, oh, well, now go out to gamesworkshop.com, buy brand new miniatures to make the heroes. And it was like, wait a minute. And so you had to go out and spend, and I'm not joking, you had to spend probably almost as much as you spent for the box itself to buy miniatures. And it was kind of like, excuse me, Games Workshop, what are you doing? I mean, I get that you're trying to get people interested in your miniatures game and you want people to buy your miniatures, but you really should have a fully functioning miniatures game inside your product. And I'm not saying that because, it's like, oh, I bought this thing a long time ago and I'm just, this was something that was, no, this is something that they've been doing now for a while. And people are now only coming to that realization, where some of us probably knew that a while ago, but just didn't really pick up on it because we weren't really playing the game. And I mean, to be honest, I'm not actually playing Age of Sigmar that much, okay? Because I've been interested in Warlord, because to me, Warlord is a much better game than Age of Sigmar. Now, that's not a knock against Games Workshop or any of their products, okay? I like Games Workshop. I like a lot of their products. I have a lot of their things. I just don't like their business practices. Okay, I think their business practices could use a lot of work. And I think that people really need to sit down and say, okay, enough is enough, Games Workshop. Okay, stop what you're doing. Okay, we need to move on from this. Because it's not fun anymore. It's not bringing us satisfaction to watch the miniatures community running around in circles while, you are basically laughing and gleefully at us doing it. Okay? And that's not hyperbole. That's basically what they're doing. Is they're laughing while we, as the miniatures community, are running around with like chickens with our heads cut off. And and they're not the only ones doing it. Like, there are a bunch of miniatures games out there. There's a bunch of miniatures games companies out there that are doing the same damn thing, because Games Workshop's doing it. Why not us? And just today, as I was kind of, thinking, oh man, what am I going to use as, some miniature, some skeleton miniatures, because the bones at my local store is mostly out because they haven't gotten a refresh in a while. Okay, so they're kind of lacking when it comes to, like some of the Reaper Bones miniatures. And I get it. There's supply chain issues, there's other things going on. I get it. But at the same token, it's like I went to another aisle of the store where they sell some different miniatures games and looked at the Elder Scrolls Call to Arms miniatures. Okay, thinking, oh, here's some skeleton miniatures that I could buy and paint, and I could, kind of look at and, okay, this is, $48.99 US dollars for 5 miniatures. It's not hyperbole, folks. That's how much it costs for those. And I'm sitting there going, are you flipping kidding me? Why are we buying miniatures, okay, for $50 that is, pretty much at this point, that's like Games Workshop prices. Why is that? When you can buy skeleton miniatures on the Bones line, like this pack of 3 archers, $10 US. 3 miniatures, $10. 5 miniatures, $50. What are we doing here, folks? Like, and Fantasy Flight is probably one of the worst of the bunch. Fantasy Flight is like $20 for 1 miniature and a bunch of basic cards and cardboard. What? Again, what are we doing here, folks? What has happened in the miniatures game market? I just want to know. What has happened? I understand that if people are selling a full-fledged board game or miniatures game experience, that they're going to, they're going to want you to pay for the cost of that. But at the same token, $50 for 5 miniatures, for 5 or 6 miniatures, that is insanity. When you can get, no offense, better quality miniatures for less price. Okay. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't buy and play Elder Scrolls if that's what you want to play. If that's what you want to buy and play it. Okay? I'm not saying don't. I'm saying think about what you're buying. Okay? Really sit down and let that marinate for a while. Okay? Really sit down and think, what am I purchasing for this much money? Okay? Because that was something that Discourse kind of highlighted right around Halloween, is she was talking about how, like, when she was kind of talking about how the miniatures for Cursed City cost 126 pounds off of Games Workshop, but you could source other miniatures from other websites for much cheaper. You could get vampire miniatures, like Bones, like, other places for a heck of a lot cheaper than you would ever get off of Games Workshop. Okay? And it's not that, maybe you can't buy 1 or 2 of the Games Workshop miniatures, but 126 miniatures for a board game expansion, and that board game expansion being the Warhammer Cursed City expansions. Okay? It's like, really? Come on, Games Workshop. You're supposed to be, you guys are supposed to be top of the bunch. And yet, your crap is so expensive. And I'm sorry, I'm not saying that it's all crap. I'm saying that it's so expensive. Stop selling this stuff for that much money. Okay? And I know I've been talking a lot about, that stuff, but it's been kind of wearing on me. In fact, I didn't actually sleep well last night because I spent most of the night kind of sitting there, thinking about different types of miniatures games and different types of things, and, thinking, what would I say? And I was going to sit down and do this video today, and I thought, well, maybe I could say some things on there. So basically with this guy, what I'm doing is I'm putting on, or I've been putting on, I should say, a whole bunch of dark green paint. Because what we're going to do is when we get done with the dark green, okay, what we're going to do is we're then going to shade it. Then we're going to come back over the top of that shade, and we're going to build some of the color back up, and we're going to build the color back up, and then we will spend a little bit of time doing some highlights of his skin. Okay, because he's got a lot of places where, you know, his skin will have a lot of highlights necessary. Okay, and so you can kind of see where we've been painting the skin. Okay, so like up here on his tail, around his legs, on his feet, they're kind of hard to see. On his legs, on his arms, and then on his head, and this arm up here, which now that's actually done, we can get down in there. Yay! And then yeah, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna slowly build the color up and highlight, because he's got a lot of really cool muscles and scales and different things. This is one of the reasons why I wanted to paint these guys so bad, is because they have a lot of like interesting things. Okay, and so once we get done shading him and then we highlight, you'll actually start to see a lot more of his stuff. So I think probably what we're going to end up doing is I think we're probably going to call it there. And then when we come back, we will paint the armor. And this is also known as the Kingdom of Jade. So I'm probably going to color some of the bits of the armor. I'm probably going to use like the royal gold. I'm going to use a couple golds. But I'm also probably going to end up using, and I don't have it out here on the table, but I'm probably going to end up using my green metallic. Just because that one has, you know, some really interesting things. And then there's a really cool design on the edge of the sword. You can kind of see there. There's a really cool design. We will hit that with that green metallic paint after we hit it with the lead belcher and everything. That will give it that sort of like magical vibrancy to it. So smash that like button, hit subscribe, drop a comment below. Let me know what you think about if you've ever played anything Games Workshop, if you think that they've kind of dropped off in recent years, or if you think that they are, you know, like some of the best, you know, dang content creators ever, and that's fine. You know, we can kind of go around in the comment section about that. So, you know, just drop that comment below and just let me know what you think, and we'll go from there. And on the next one, like I said, we're going to get into painting the armor. Once we get done painting the armor, then we'll go back, we'll shade everything, and then we'll start doing the highlights. So, I hope you'll join me here for the next painting tutorial, and we will see you on the next one.